the incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
What's going on, guys? We got to talk about J.D. Vance cooking with Crisco, this woke behind leftist Martha Raddatz, okay? This lady has been on ABC, or at least on TV. I don't know how long she's been on ABC, but she's been on TV for a long freaking time. And I know she's been on ABC for a long time as well. Okay, she used to actually be a good reporter. She used to do things like that now they criticize like Tucker Carlson for, like interview Vladimir Putin, right? Like this lady has done some really crazy things in the name of journalism. However, now the mighty have fallen because she's out here trying to convince J.D. Vance that illegal immigrants taking over apartment complexes isn't that serious, okay? It's just a few apartments, JD. Stop being such a racist. It is totally ridiculous. I don't know how these people sleep at night, and how do you get this great, amazing reputation? You built up a whole lifetime of greatness, and then you turn around and turn into some idiotically stupid woke leftist and ruin your reputation out here getting cooked by a dude who's practically half your age, J.D. Vance. And not just that, I'm about to cook you too. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. So happy to have you here this morning, Senator Vance. I know you've been going hard on the campaign trail, but I want to start with the hurricane. During Hurricane Helene, as we heard, former President Trump suggested the federal government was not only sending FEMA aid meant for the hurricane to migrants, but going out of their way to not help people in Republican areas. Do you think that is true?
Well, Martha, what the president said is that fundamentally FEMA aid is distracted by going to illegal migrants. And by the way, good morning, and thanks for having me. We've got Republican congressmen who are on the ground who represent that area saying that they have to call the White House to get food and water to FEMA. I don't frankly think there's anything malicious going on here, Martha, but I do think that we've had an incompetent response to this particular crisis, particularly in Western North Carolina, which, to be fair, was hit harder than a lot of us expected it. But fundamentally, if you've got 6 days after the hurricane, the 82nd Airborne is still trickling in, I do think that we had a fundamentally incompetent, overly bureaucratic response to the hurricane. So what you hear from folks on the ground is they feel left behind. And Martha, we have to remember, of course, I know this area well. This is the Appalachian region of our country where people have felt ignored by their government for 30 years, and it doesn't help when you have a response to the hurricane that's slow, that's halting, and then you layer on top of it, of course,
Senator Vance
has done a lot.
Senator Vance, I want to go back to
resettlement work. Go ahead.
I want to go back to what former President Trump said. He said they're going out of their way to not help people in Republican areas. There is no truth to that. And on staging, Pentagon officials.
What is with these people having these like interviews? These interviews are crazy. They basically have an interview where they don't think anything that the Republicans said is true. So what they do is they get them on here like, well, none of this is true. So can you tell us why you're saying a bunch of untruths? It's like, what type of interview is this? These people are nuts.
Say that active duty troops were staged and ready to go before being called upon and were instantly out the door. So President Trump, former President Trump, is saying things that aren't true about that money being withheld from Republican areas.
Well, Martha, I think you're actually confusing staging of resources from the rapid response of the U.S. military. I mean, look, in FEMA's defense, there are things after this hurricane that FEMA simply could not do. You actually need military command and control. You need military resources deployed to the area. And I think all the president has said is, frankly, what some of Kamala Harris's surrogates have said, which is that if these areas were a little bit more democratic, maybe Kamala Harris would have focused on them more. That acknowledgement is not to attack, frankly, the good folks of FEMA. It's to suggest that Americans are feeling left behind by their government, which they are, Martha.
Okay,
if you talk to folks on the ground, I've had friends that have been in Boone, North Carolina, helping with the cleanup. It is an extraordinary sense of betrayal and being left behind. People are worried that their government doesn't care about them. I'm much more worried.
And Martha don't care about him either, JD. She just cares about trying to make Trump look bad. Watch every single thing in this entire interview is about, well, Trump lied about this. Trump is saying this bad thing. Every single thing in this interview, nothing is going to be about the actual people and supporting the people at all, because that's not how these propagandists operate. It's all politics with them all the time.
About the incompetence of Kamala Harris's administration that led to that, more than I am the fact that Donald
Senator
Trump
Vance, I'm just going to say that local officials and FEMA officials say that is just flat wrong. But we played some other comments about migrants, including in Aurora, in Colorado, where Trump said the city had been invaded and conquered by Venezuelan gangs. The Republican mayor of the city said flatly the city and state have not been taken over or invaded or occupied by migrant gangs. So do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha,
I'm going to stop you.
If you're such a, why don't you run for be the president or the vice president, since you're so dang smart? Like, what is with this? Isn't an interview. It's not even a grilling. It's like, well, I'm gonna just call you on here and just say everything that you're saying is wrong, and I'm not even gonna let you talk and even defend your positions. Like, what is this even?
Incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting, because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said, rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it.
This fool Martha tried to say, imagine you live in one of those apartment complexes. Some people with guns come over and take it over, and you still live there, and they come and they collect the rent from you. Like, hey, we're here to collect rent. Like, well, the rent's supposed to be $900. Well, we say it's $2,000 a month now. Okay, sir, here you go. You just hand your whole wallet over to these freaking thugs out here in Venezuela, and this isn't even one apartment complex, it's several, and it's not across the nation. This is all in a single place in Aurora, so it's in one place, There's other stuff going on in other places, but we're talking about one place right now. And this woke, ridiculous lady saying this is a handful of instances. That's like saying that if you have like tens of thousands of rapists and murderers who a bunch of these illegal migrants did come into the country, it's about 13,000 convicted murderers. Well, it's only a handful in the grand scheme of things because there's millions of people here. So because they haven't killed millions of people, that means it's okay, right? This lady is stupid. I ain't never seen somebody who's this much of a fake news propaganda. Donald Trump, I think, was right when he said that ABC was worse than MSDNC. I think Trump was right again.
Do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said. I want to move on to
just a few
women.
Apartment complexes, no big deal.
A few apartment complexes that the mayor did not seem was invading the entire city. Let's move on to women and abortion. Donald Trump is leading Kamala Harris in our poll among males by 8 points, but lagging behind Harris by 9 points among females. You said during the debate that you and Trump have more to do to earn back people's trust, specifically as it relates to women and reproductive rights. 56% of those polled support restoring abortion access to what it was under Roe v. Wade. So what would you say specifically to the women watching this morning who believe they should have their own say over their bodies and not the government, either state or federal?
Well, Martha, first of all, what I'd say is that I think renationalizing this entire debate is a big mistake. And I understand that a lot of Americans, according to that poll, apparently disagree with me and President Trump here. But we want to respect Californians. We want to respect Alabamans. We want to respect Pennsylvanians. These folks are going to have different approaches to this particular topic. And I think that what we had in this country for 50 years was a culture war over this particular issue because we had nationalized it. And it's also important, Martha, that while Kamala Harris uses the slogan of returning to Roe versus Wade, she has endorsed policies that go way beyond anything that Roe versus Wade ever meant in this country. Taxpayer-funded abortions for late-term abortions. She's explicitly refused to endorse things like the Born Alive Act, which would protect babies who survive botched abortion. So while she hides behind the popular slogan of Roe versus Wade, Kamala Harris's actual abortion views, I think, are much more radical than even a lot, I think, frankly, most of our pro-choice citizens.
And they also don't care about democracy. Having 50 states and having them decide individually what they want to do, I think is a great thing. You have options. You don't have to all do the same thing because the federal government decides that you do. I understand there's some things the federal government decides, but they don't have to decide every freaking thing. If the federal government is going to decide everything, why even have different states? We should all just be one state. We just America. Again, J.D. Vance, Born Alive, baby is aborted, comes out when I'm still alive. They don't have to keep the child alive because they tried to abort it. It doesn't even count as a birth. These people are sick in the head, and I don't understand how people support. How are you there's so many Christian people go to church who support these demons. These people are evil.
Let me go back again. What would you say to those women who don't want people involved in their individual rights? Kamala Harris is on that side of that, not you.
Well, I think, Martha, that's not right, actually. I think Kamala Harris has taken this so far that a lot of women, if they knew Kamala Harris's actual view and not the slogan, they would recognize that it's far more radical. They can believe in individual autonomy, but also recognize there are, of course, limits here. We don't want to abort 9-month-old babies here.
But you see how this lady characterized from the beginning? I'm going to let JD cook, okay? But I got to just point out that she characterized this as Kamala Harris got it right and you don't. Dude, this is straight propaganda. Like, that's not how you're supposed to conduct yourself as a journalist. It makes absolutely no, it's totally ridiculous. Let me let JD cook.
and not the slogan, they would recognize that it's far more radical. They can believe in individual autonomy, but also recognize there are, of course, limits here. We don't want to abort 9-month-old babies here, and we don't want to have taxpayers funding it. So I think everybody recognizes there's a right balance to strike. But to answer your question, Martha, what I would say to women is that Donald Trump and I want to make it easier to make the choice of life in the first place. And I know a lot of young women, especially when I was younger, who chose abortion because they feel like they didn't have any options. And what I want to do as a person who admittedly, Martha, wants to protect the most vulnerable members of our society, I'd like to make it easier for women to choose life to begin with. I think that goes to lowering the cost of housing, which of course is skyrocketed under Kamala Harris's administration. I think it's making it easier for working moms to balance work and life and family. There's a lot that we can do to become more pro-family. That's how I think we can best earn back trust. And
Senator,
yes.
I want to get to some other topics here on the Attorney General.
This man, whenever she feels like she's getting cooked, she feels that freaking fire smacking her in the face. She's like, it's hot, I'm sweating. Like, stop it, JD. Then all of a sudden, you want to change the Why even bother asking questions? Because these people want to cut you off and then insert whatever their opinion is, which is usually false. Whatever their opinion is, trash. And two, when they don't cut you off quite as quickly, then they still cut you off and just change the subject when they feel like it's not going their way. They cut you off to try to counter what you're saying. When that fails, it's like, well, screw it. We just cut the whole conversation. Just cut it off. Turn the cameras off. We turn it to another question. I won't talk no more. These people are radicals, guys. You don't hate them enough. And these people deserve to be shunned and just straight up just whisked away out of our society. These are not good people.
You said on Friday that the most important person in government in a Trump-Vance administration, other than the president, is not you. It would be the Attorney General. Why do you consider that the most important spot, the second most important spot?
Well, one reason, Martha, is just public opinion. And what I mean here is that we really want the American people to believe that we have a fair and equitable administration of justice. If not, the entire sort of system falls apart. You need people to believe that if the Attorney General prosecutes somebody, it's motivated by justice and law and not by politics. And unfortunately,
would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? Would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? He suggested that in the past.
Martha, he was president for 4 years, and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris, who has tried to arrest everything from pro-life activists to her political opponents.
He said those people who cheated will be prosecuted
as a weapon against people. Well, he said that people who violated our election laws will be prosecuted.
Facts.
I think that's the administration of law. He didn't say people are going to go to jail because they disagree with me. That has, in fact, been the administration and the policy of Kamala Harris, Martha. Look, under the last 3.5 years, we have seen politically motivated after politically motivated prosecution. I'd like us to just get back to a system of law and order where we try to arrest people when they break the law, not because they disagree with the prevailing opinion of the day. And there's a fundamental difference here between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Donald Trump may agree or disagree on a particular issue, but he will fight for your right to speak your mind without the government trying to silence you. Kamala Harris is explicitly
Senator Vance,
censorship.
I want to go back to Donald Trump.
We've got to get a Department of Justice that believes in the First Amendment, Martha. The First Amendment is the bedrock of our Constitution.
This lady never shuts up. She just doesn't like the fact that J.D. Vance can masterfully dismantle all her points, so she just tries to interrupt them over and over again. It is hella annoying.
Kamala Harris, who
Senator, we're just about out of time here. We're just about out of time here. And I want to end with this. In interview after interview, question after question, and in the debate, you refuse to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020.
Yeah, and nobody cares about this, but yet you idiots keep bringing it up anyway, as if this is somehow... Imagine thinking that repeatedly asking this question is going to change the outcome of the 2024 election, or that it's going to make J.D. Vance look really bad or Trump look really bad. Nobody cares. What people care about is the economy. When people are polled, they don't say that, well, Trump and J.D. Vance not acknowledging the 2020 election is making me want to vote for Kamala. Nobody's saying that. People are saying that their top issue is the economy and illegal immigration on both the Republican and the Democrat side, except with the Democrats throw abortion in there, and that's it. Ain't nobody talking about the 2020 election. Have casual conversations with other people. Ain't nobody caring about the 2020 election. We 4 years past it. It's 2024. It's like, are these people serious?
Election. So I'm just going to assume that if I ask you 50 times whether he lost the election, you would not acknowledge that he did. Is that correct?
Martha, you asked this question. I've been asked this question 10 times in the past couple of weeks. Of course, Donald Trump and I believe there were problems in 2020. You haven't asked about inflation.
No, I'm sorry. Let's stick to this.
People,
I know.
American people want us to talk about how to make their lives better. They don't want us to.
Why won't you say that?
Because, Martha, I believe that in 2020, when big tech firms were censoring American citizens, that created very serious problems. And by the way, Martha, you're a journalist. You represent the American media. Look at the polling on this. A lot of Americans feel like they were silenced in the run-up to the 2020 election. That is such a bigger issue. That fundamental problem than me and Donald Trump talking about it. And unfortunately,
Martha, I don't understand why you won't just say it if you believe it.
Won't just say what? That I think the 2020 election had some problems? I've said that repeatedly.
Did Donald Trump lose? That's the question, and you know that's the question.
Martha, I've said repeatedly, I think the 2020 election had problems. You want to say rigged? You want to say he won? Use whatever vocabulary term you want. I want to focus on the fact that we had big technology firms censoring our fellow citizens in a way that violated our fundamental rights. The fact that you're so obsessed with what word I used to describe this phenomenon rather than the phenomenon itself suggests something very broken in the American media. If we want to restore trust in American elections and democracy, which I want to do, Martha, we have to talk openly about what happened in 2020. And most importantly, we've got to talk about what happened afterwards.
Okay. They want to say, we don't care about what happened. Just say you lost. That's what they want to do. And I'm not going to play the compilation that I keep playing over and over again, where the Democrats keep denying elections because they do it literally every time they lose. I'm not going to play that this time because I'm just tired of seeing it myself. I don't want to have to edit that into the video again. But it's every single time they lose, they do this. And now all of a sudden they want to say, well, regardless of how we won, just accept it. Just accept the L. It doesn't matter if we cheated. It doesn't matter. Just say you lost. No, this is the stupidest thing ever. Imagine you're playing any type of game, a board game, a video game. It could be freaking tic-tac-toe, and somebody just changes the rules in the middle of the game, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't fair. You're like, say you lost. You're like, want to do this pressure campaign. You don't want to talk about the details. You don't want to try to debunk anything that J.D. Vance is saying. You can't say that what he's saying is true, because they know that they censored the Hunter Biden laptop story. Okay, they know that it was some voter fraud. They know that this was a mail-in catastrophe of an election and that they used the pandemic to win. But they don't care, guys. That's why they don't want to talk about it. It's because they don't give a damn. They're happy that they cheated to win. They're happy that it got them a dub. Anybody can say, well, if I cheat at a game, or I cheat at an election, or I cheat at a job interview, I cheat on a test, I could get a high rank, a high score. I could win if you cheat. If you put codes into a video game and you beat the game, what do you got to acknowledge that somebody beat the game? Well, you could also acknowledge that they cheated too, right? Like, what the hell is this?
Unable to afford the basic necessities of middle-class life because Kamala Harris is in the White House.
We're going to leave it right there. Appreciate your time this morning.
What a fake news propagandist. This lady, man, I can't wait till this editing for this video is over, because even looking at this lady on the screen, the propaganda is real, guys. This lady doesn't have a clue how fraudulent she looks. This looks so fake and manufactured. Again, J.D. Vance called it. There's no talk about the economy. There's no talk about the open border. A little bit that they covered, she tried to cover up only, oh, it's a handful of issues. It wasn't a full takeover. it was just a takeover of a couple apartment complexes. Just a few apartment complexes. Okay, like just a couple, okay, just a couple people, you know, a couple buildings that gangs took over. Like, imagine how many people and how much firepower you got to have to take over a damn apartment complex that they still haven't even got control over. Still haven't got control over till today. Talking about the law enforcement has dealt with it. No, they haven't. That's not even true. They haven't dealt with it. Would be they resolved the problem and those people are out of there. They haven't dealt with it. This is crazy, guys. Like, this lady is a nutcase. Like, the gangs are still out there. Okay, like they're all over damn America. And this lady doesn't want to acknowledge any problems American citizens have, be it with the economy and be it with illegal immigration. The only thing that she wanted to talk about that some radical left lunatics want to talk about is abortion. They want to talk about that issue to death because they feel like it's a winning issue, which at this point, you could argue that's not even really that much of a winning issue for them at this point, because they can't even debate people like JD Vance has got their number on this issue. These people are getting cooked on a daily. They keep trying, and Vance keeps firing back. They're not ready for JD Vance. Everybody underestimated him, including me. But we all make mistakes. See, I learned from my mistake. These fake news propagandists don't learn. They're stupid. Y'all smell that? It smells like fried propagandists in here because JD Vance cooked the hell out of this Martha lady with a fall from grace. Like, all of these woke leftist reputations are just going down and down and down. And yes, whatever the hell Donald Trump does when he does get elected, I don't give a damn if he does go after you politically. I hope that he does, because F you guys for this propaganda. This is not news, okay? Y'all need to be involved in every single legal battle possible since nobody's above the law, right? Like, there's got to be some sort of ethical boundaries being broken here with this propaganda. This is not news. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate you watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network.